welcome back to Low Season Traveller. I'm Honor Morrison and it is my pleasure to welcome back Bruce Haxton to the Low Season Traveller podcast. Today we talk in more detail about his company, the Tuk Tuk Club, and we really do cover it all, so I think the best thing to do is just get started. Hi Bruce, welcome back to Low Season Traveller. Now on this episode we're talking all about your travel business where you give people tours across northern Thailand in a tuk-tuk, which is something I have not seen before. You normally associate them with being in crowded cities and getting you from A to B quite quickly and, quite authentically, I'll give you that. But I don't associate tuk-tuks with the mountains. So can you start by telling me where this idea came from and what inspired you?
Hi, nice to speak to you again. I've worked in travel for quite a long time and I was finding that much of the travel industry was becoming, to me, a little bit boring. Everybody was doing the same stuff, whether it's adventure travel companies or whatever. It just seemed everybody was doing the same stuff and there wasn't much that was exciting me. Now, that might be because I'm an old cynic, or it might be because the industry was a bit stagnant, probably a mixture of both. And I was thinking, what can I do that's different? I was then overseas on business and I met somebody who'd done something in India and with rickshaws, and I'd always loved tuk-tuks in my time in Thailand, but I was never one of those guys that had persuaded a tuk-tuk driver to let me have a go sort of on a boozy night in the middle of Bangkok. So anyway, when I got home, I let it rumble around my head for a bit and thought, oh, could we do something interesting with tuk-tuks in Thailand? I happen to know, I've known someone for about 30 years who's a tuk-tuk driver. He was kind enough to let me rent his tuk-tuk for a few weeks. A Thai friend and I then drove from Bangkok up to the north via some interesting back roads. And we drove a few thousand kilometers around the mountains in the north in a real deal Bangkok tuk-tuk. So quite small, LPG, powered, not a very big engine. And do you know what? For the first time for a long time, I was smiling from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to sleep. And my Thai friend who was with me, he couldn't get the grin off his face either. And we both traveled all over the place. It was as if the whole world had opened up again. So I thought, crikey, if a grizzled old travel industry veteran like myself gets excited by this, then surely other people will do. We had our first paying travelers in late 2017. And it was just wonderful. They were wonderful people. We had an amazing time. We've kept in touch. They're really great people. And they were really made up with the adventure they had. And we thought, okay, we're onto something here. And it went from there. We launched with an 11-day adventure, which most people rolled, not most people, sorry. Travel industry people rolled their eyes at, saying nobody's ever going to come to northern Thailand for 11 days. Well, I'd like to say that we proved them wrong. It's a hugely popular trip. Why? Because it's a proper adventure. You get to the heart of things. And then over time, we launched a 5-day adventure. We have a 3-day adventure. We had a 7-day adventure launched in 2020. That was good timing. So that will roll into being launched in 21, 22.
Fingers crossed.
And then we started doing 1-day adventures because we realized that whilst we would love to force everybody to spend longer in northern Thailand, we can't do that, but we wanted everybody to have the opportunity to do something fun and something a little bit different.
Yeah, well, that brings me really nicely on, because I wanted to know how you've got so many tours available. How do you know which is the right one for you? That's
a great question. A lot of it comes down to time. A lot of people still, unfortunately, only spend 2 or 3 days in northern Thailand. And I would say, then choose our 1-day adventure because you get a little bit of everything plus tuk-tuks, amazing scenery, really cool rural villages, amazing little remote temples that nobody else ever goes to. We meet some elephants, we do some rafting, and we have the tuk-tuks. So it's an action-packed day, ticking many of people's northern Thailand highlights in 1 day. If you have more time, then the 3, 5, 7, and 11 trips, it's really how much time you want to spend in the north. They're all awesome trips. We like the 11-day trip because it's a full loop and you head right into Mae Hong Son. So it's like a really nice progression, and people really get into the rhythm of the adventure. You get to know your fellow travelers really well. You get to know my team really well. I'm very, very lucky. I have an amazing team that work with me. And you just get to see so much. But for example, our 3-day adventures, we go camping in a little, just outside a small Karen Hill tribe village where nobody else goes camping. We work with the guys from the village to get that all set up. And that's a really cool experience, to be cooking over a campfire with the villagers, having amazing food next to a stream, 1,800 meters high up into the mountains. It's just cool. You know, we're never going to push somebody into something we don't think that's right.
And on your longer tours, are you staying in a different place each night, and you have your tuk-tuk, I suppose, but then are you with a group of tuk-tuks being led by one person? Or I've read that you can actually drive yourself. But are you still driving in convoy? How does it work?
That's right. We always drive in convoy. So the lead tuk-tuk is always driven by our lead guide, always. And at the rear of the convoy is one of our support vehicles who takes everybody's bags, water, spare parts, snacks. Sort of, they're loaded down with all the goodies. They're the people you're really nice to, because then you get the dried mango and all this sort of stuff. So we always travel in convoy. We on the longer trips, we stay for 2 nights in the first location, because that's where we do all our training. So that's really important. Plus, there's loads to do around there. I mean, they're full days. But something we wanted to do with this trip is, there's a lot of adventure travel trips. You're in a different place every night. And I look at the itineraries and think, crikey, I'd need a holiday after doing that. You know, you get somewhere, you go for dinner, boom, you're off the next morning. That's not the way I like to travel. I like to experience places. So we have our first stop outside of our base is a small hill tribe village. We spend 2 nights there. The night we arrive, and then the next day we don't go driving, we go hiking in the forest. So it's something very different. So you're not always sitting in a tuk-tuk. We spend 2 nights in Mehongsan, again, because it's a beautiful place to explore. Where we stay is a stunning resort. If I had to choose somewhere to live for the rest of my life, and I could afford to, I would live in that resort for the rest of my life. And then we stay, on the way back, we stay for 2 nights just outside Bai. And again, so people have a free day. They can go and explore, or they can chill by the infinity pool over the rice fields. You know, we want people to travel with us and feel energized when they're finished, not exhausted and need to go on another holiday.
That's brilliant, because you're exactly right. You go on these organized prepaid holidays and it is like bam, 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 we're going here, there, everywhere. And you're like, oh, well, that was really nice, but I only got 5 minutes there because the tour was leaving and we were going to get left behind. So I love that. I think that's a really brilliant idea, that, you know, you'd actually come away from your holiday going, I feel like I fully got the most out of where I was staying. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, our trips aren't really about ticking sites off. I'd love to say this was a great strategic thing. It wasn't. It's just how it's happened. But the fact you travel by tuk-tuk keeps you in the journey every step of the way. If you go by minivan, eventually you start nodding off and you fall asleep, or you put your headphones in or whatever. And the same by car. When you're in a tuk-tuk, that's not going to happen. So it becomes as much about the journey as it does about the end points of each day.
Yeah.
And I know that's a cliche, but I think when you travel thousands of miles, you save up, you work hard, you come thousands of miles to visit a different country, then be in the journey the whole time you're here. Because you can fall asleep in a car when you're heading back from the airport, when you get back home. And tuk-tuks allow you to do that. You get the sights, the smells. You can hear people shouting hi at you as you drive through small little communities. You know, you feel part of it.
It's fully immersive.
Yeah, I can come over all a little bit sort of hippified. I don't mean to in that. It's just
it doesn't come across hippified. It comes across as passionate. I mean, it just sounds brilliant, and you can tell that you love it. You genuinely love it.
I do, and I'm lucky my team do, and we are very lucky that those who've travelled with us absolutely love it too, and that's why we do it. We do it to put a smile on people's faces at the end of the day, and to give people an opportunity to really get into the soul of northern Thailand.
Well, that's an ethos I can definitely get behind. Your tuk-tuk tours are definitely more personable, and you say that you connect with local communities. People from local communities will drive the tuk-tuks and they'll organise the tours and they'll be where you stay. How important is it to you that your business gives back to the community and has this positive impact?
Oh, it's huge. It's another cliche, isn't it? People have their responsible travel policies and all this sort of stuff, but it's in our DNA. So the team are all Thai, other than me. They're all hugely passionate about their country. They're all hugely passionate about the north of Thailand, and they're all really cool people as well as being good at their jobs. Everywhere we stay is owned locally and staffed locally. All of the side things we do. So when we go hiking in the forest, we take village guides, for the simple reason that they know the forest much better than anyone else does. But also, it's really nice to put money into those communities. We eat locally. Everywhere we eat is very, very local. Why? Because the food tends to be better, but also because then we get to know those people. And we get to know their families, and we get to be able to. Yeah, it's quite nice to be able to support those businesses, without coming across all wishy-washy. It's very much part of what we do. We treat everybody we meet with the utmost respect, because without those people, we don't have a trip. All we'd be then doing is driving from A to B, which is, it's the people that make things.
Sounds like a really virtuous circle, like everything's feeding into everything. How can visitors and tourists make sure that they're positively feeding into that circle as well?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I think it's really difficult to answer that without writing some sort of a PhD. I think the key is, number one, to travel with respect at the front of your mind, so that I'm sure I've seen this. I'm sure Jed from Low Season Travellers said this somewhere before. But when we go to another country, we're visiting people's homes, and it's really important that we give the people who live in those homes, the country, the respect that we would expect when visitors come to our house. I think when you choose a company to travel with, think about the options they're presenting to you. Do you get the feeling the hotels are locally owned, or are they a big international chain? There's nothing wrong with international chains, but when it's a smaller hotel, you generally will know that money is spent in the local community. I think that's a really positive thing.
I think that you've really hit the nail on the head there. The big thing is respect, for sure.
Yeah.
So you're looking at your tours again. What kind of people do you attract? Are you looking at families, couples, groups of friends, or do you attract everyone and anyone?
All of the above. Amazingly, when we started this, we thought it would be largely younger cliched adventurous types. Actually, on our longer trips, the sort of majority of people have been 35 upwards. Our eldest travellers were a North American couple who were 80 and 81.
Oh, goals.
And they did our 11-day self-drive trip, and they were awesome. We've had plenty of people in their 60s, 70s, 50s, 40s. We've had families we do have an age limit of 5, but we've had families, lots of families have a great time, young sort of 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So we've had the whole range. And the beauty is, to date, we have found that everybody gets on. We think it's partly the magic of tuk-tuks. And I think secondly, it's the fact that something like what we do attracts sort of like-minded people, irrespective of how old they are. One other great thing is we also get a really good 50-50-ish split between men and women, which is great. And I will just pass this on. I say this to everybody when we're doing our training, that women are better tuk-tuk drivers than men, guaranteed.
Yes. I will definitely. I'll be sure to put that in the write-up. Women are better drivers. Looking at your website, you said that you can experience things on these tours that you'll never see anywhere else. You'll eat things that you'll never eat anywhere else. And I wanted to know, what are these things that I'm not going to get in other places?
I'm trying to think what I was thinking when I wrote that now. I think the routes we travel on are very, very, very rarely covered by any other travel company. So you get an experience that other people aren't going to get. I think when you arrive in a small Hill Tribe Village in a bright orange tuk-tuk. As a foreigner, the reception you get is something you have to come and experience it. It's brilliant because it's a look of wonder. How on earth did you get here? Why are you here in a tuk-tuk? And it breaks all those barriers down. It puts everybody on a much more equal footing somehow. Almost every Thai person passing wants to stop and take a photo of the convoy of tuk-tuks.
They are very photogenic, I have to say.
They are. I mean, our travellers are even more photogenic, but it's just the novelty of doing this by tuk-tuk catches people's imaginations. And I think that's very special. That's something you don't come across in many other ways.
No, I totally agree. I, as a consumer who looked at your website, I was totally entranced. I was like, this is something I want to do. So on your tours, you talk about elephants, and I know elephants you're quite passionate about elephant sanctuaries and saving them, basically.
I mean, I think the first thing I should say is that I'm not an expert. I wasn't born and brought up with elephants, like many people in communities up here were. What I have done over the years and years, I've been involved in travel in Thailand, is I've listened to a lot of people, and I've got to know a lot of people, and got to know them over sort of 8, 9, 10 years, where you really know what someone's like. And elephants are, they're amazing animals. They're just cool. There's something about elephants that most people go wow at. We do visit an elephant home on our trips, and I've known those people for 8 years now, and I've been lucky enough to help them sort of change and refocus the way they do things to create a better environment for their elephants. And they've owned their elephants from birth. All of those elephants with them were born into the family that owned them, which is quite important. None of those elephants were taken. There's all sorts of horror stories, but you can trace these elephants all the way back to birth, which I think is quite important. The last 12 months have been incredibly difficult for elephants up in the north of Thailand. They eat a huge amount of food, and no matter what's going on in the world, they need to eat, obviously, that food. The people who look after the elephants, the mahouts, they need to eat and live and look after their family. And most elephant homes, for want of a better word, have had pretty much zero income for the last 12 months.
Yeah.
It's been very, very difficult, very sad. Hopefully this is a good opportunity for people who own elephants to make sure they are set up the right way for the future. We don't do anything to do with elephant riding and things like that, haven't done for many years. So hopefully there will be a good opportunity for people to reset.
And in the meantime, you've offered to do something really incredible, which is cycle and raise money for this particular elephant home, isn't it? That you're associated with?
I decided I wanted to do a very reasonably long bike ride, and then I thought, I could maybe do this and help raise some money to provide the food for the elephant home that we work with. So what I'm going to do, the date's not exact yet, but it looks like it will be in May. I'm going to ride the northern route through northeast Thailand, so from Chiang Mai, sort of across the north of northeast down to a place called Ubon Ratchathani, and then back up sort of the southern part of Isan and back up to the north. It's about 2,400 kilometers. The plan is 20 days. That's pretty doable for me. If people are kind enough to sponsor me or to donate money, I'm trying to initially to raise enough money to look after the elephants for a month, and their food and their mahouts will cost around about £6,000. Yeah. Now that's quite a broad figure that covers all sorts of stuff, but roughly. So that's my initial goal. But actually, in my heart of hearts, I'd like to be able to cover 3 months worth of looking after the elephants. As soon as the dates are finalised, I will have a funding page. They're good people, and if I can do a little bit in return, then at least maybe one day my children might turn around and say, "Hey, Dad, that was quite cool."
Well, we'd absolutely love to support your movement, and that's why Jed at Low Season Traveller has said that he'll give 50% commission from anyone who books to the Tuk Tuk Club via the Low Season Traveller website. 50% of that commission will go to helping the elephants. Hopefully people will feel just as passionate as we do about helping these animals and local communities really get through what has been globally tough time.
It's incredibly kind of Jed and all of you at Season Traveller. It's quite humbling, really. Whatever we do, we can help people who I think deserve a little bit of help in these times.
Yeah, and I think that concludes it nicely, because I feel like that's the ethos of everything you're doing. It's a little bit just to help somebody else and put a smile on people's faces, pandemic or not. So that's a really lovely way to end it. Thank you so much, Bruce. It's been so lovely talking to you.
Absolute pleasure. It's been a real pleasure talking to you too.
If you want to help the elephants in any way you can, just like we do, please go to our website, www.lowseasontraveller.com. There you'll find a link to Bruce's Just Giving page, as well as details on how you can book a tour through our website. Thank you so much to Bruce for sharing his passion with us, and good luck on your charity cycle ride. We really do wish you all the best. Just like Bruce said at the end of the podcast, it's all about putting a smile on people's faces, and I hope we've done that for you. Please be sure to leave a nice review. If you'd like us to cover any other destinations, just let us know. We can be found at the tag @LowSeasonTraveller on Instagram, LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.